Okay, so when we talk about water balance, we need to be balancing the inputs and the outputs. So let's have a look at the inputs first of all. Obviously, inputs of water into our body is via our mouth as, liquids or drinks, and as food. There's lots of water in many foods, and so that is the only way in which water enters the body. But there's a number of ways that water exits the body. First of all, well, let's before we talk about how it gets out, let's talk about once the food actually goes in via the esophagus into the stomach. Well, what actually happens after that? So we've got our small intestines, and then we've got our large intestines, and then we've got our rectum. Okay, now, so water doesn't actually get absorbed into the blood from the stomach, really. Most of that happens in the small intestine. So we've got water absorption. Remember, the small intestine wall is very thin, and it's got those little villi, microvilli. So that's the wall of the small intestine. It's got a very large surface area. We've got the blood vessels that run in between here, and so the water and the glucose, etc., is able to go through and get absorbed into the blood. So that's one of the main roles of the small intestine, is for that. Now, all of the nutrients that have been absorbed have been taken out through the small intestine. So all we've got left in the large intestine is essentially our waste, the parts of the food that can't be digested. But as well as that, there's a whole heap of water still. So the large intestine is also where further absorption of water occurs. Now, the waste stays in the large intestine for around about 12 hours for the water absorption to occur. Now, think about when somebody has diarrhea. Essentially, with diarrhea, that's the waste doesn't stay in the large intestine for very long at all. So when it actually gets passed, it's still very liquidy. Let's compare that to somebody with constipation, where the waste stays in the large intestine for too long, and it gets very hard and dry, and then harder to pass. Okay, so our inputs are via the mouth through drinks and our food. That water then gets absorbed through the digestive system. Now, how does it get passed? How do we actually lose water? Well, we've got something in front of this, which I'm just going to colour in, and this is our urinary bladder. So we've got our kidneys that filter water into, so the kidneys are actually at the back, around about this position here, but on the back side of us. So they actually filter the liquid, or filter the blood. They take out wastes, and they also regulate or remove excess water that drains down into the bladder, and that gets passed as urine. So one of the outputs is urine. That's an output. Another output is there's also still some water left in the feces. So also out this way is feces, and that is another source of watery waste. Now, so how else do we get water out of our body? Well, one of the ways, of course, is through the largest organ of our body, and that is through sweat or perspiration. So water is absorbed off the skin. Finally, also through the mouth and the nose, we actually breathe out water vapor as well, water vapor in our breath. Okay, so there's 2 inputs and 4 outputs. So here they are again. We've got our in and our out. The inputs are from food and drink. So it's obviously via the mouth. The outputs are urine, feces, sweat, and breath. So it needs to be a balance of these to regulate the water within the body. The main way it's actually balanced is via the urine output, which is controlled through the hormone, antidiuretic hormone.